20-year-old Staten Island resident Alvi Limani lost control of his BMW while street racing along New Jersey's Garden State Highway in late June and struck two other cars, killing 20-year-old Albion Hysanaj and leaving another person seriously injured. Limani fled the scene on foot and remained at large until July 17th, when he and his mother, 42-year-old Vilma Vneshta, were arrested in Miami while allegedly attempting to flee the country. Authorities have provided limited details on what led to the mother-son duo's capture. The pair spent 3 weeks in custody in Florida before being extradited to New Jersey, where Limani faces charges of manslaughter, vehicular homicide, leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death, causing death while driving on a suspended license, and more. The other driver involved in the street race was hit with similar charges, while Vneshta faces a third-degree hindering charge. Prosecutors are also pursuing a hindering charge against Limani's passenger, 19-year-old Emily Harrington, who is accused of fleeing the scene after the deadly accident. Number 23. Quadruple murder in Irondequoit. While responding to a fire in late August of 2024, authorities in Irondequoit, New York, found a family murdered in the basement of their home. 30-year-old Freem Ubaldo, his girlfriend, 26-year-old Marangeli Moreno Santiago, and their 2 young children, Evangeline and Sebastian, had been stabbed to death. Police arrested the first of 2 suspects, 34-year-old Julio Cesar Pimentel Soriano, a week after the murders. Julio's brother, 31-year-old Luis Soriano, was also a suspect in the case, but he fled the area before law enforcement could catch him. Also known by the alias Jeffrey Evo, he was believed to be in Puerto Rico, but remained at large for months, at one point landing on the U.S. Marshal Service's list of top wanted fugitives in the territory. Finally, in early June, Luis Soriano was captured in the Dominican Republic, where he was working at a hotel in Punta Cana. He was extradited to Monroe County, New York, where he pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, 4 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of burglary, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 2 arson charges. According to news reports, Julio and Luis are cousins of Freem Ubaldo. Both defendants are currently awaiting trial, which is tentatively scheduled for February of 2026. Number 22. Sarah Milgrim and Yaron Lischinsky. 26-year-old Sarah Milgrim and 30-year-old Yaron Lischinsky met and began dating while working at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Earlier this year, Lischinsky purchased an engagement ring with plans to propose to Milgrim during an upcoming trip to Israel, but that never happened because the young lovers were mercilessly killed a few nights before their planned departure when a gunman opened fire during an event outside the Capital Jewish Museum. Milgrim and Lischinsky were just leaving the museum at around 9 p.m. when they crossed paths with the shooter, who was later identified as 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez. He fired at least 21 rounds at one point, stopping to reload his gun and continuing to shoot after the victims had collapsed. The suspect then entered the museum while pretending to be a civilian, fleeing the gunfire, but was detained by security and turned over to law enforcement. Authorities suspect that the double homicide was a targeted crime motivated by anti-Semitism. After being taken into custody, Rodriguez made several comments implying he had committed the shooting and alluding to his political sentiments. He's facing a slew of federal charges, including first-degree murder, murder of a foreign official, and committing a hate crime. Several of the counts included on his indictment carry a maximum sentence of death or life without parole in the event of a conviction. Number 21. Jonaiki Martinez-Estrella. In a case of mistaken identity that sent shockwaves throughout the Big Apple, an innocent teenager named Lisandro Junior Guzman Feliz was murdered outside a Bronx bodega while running a simple errand in June of 2018. He was targeted by over a dozen members of the Dominican Trinitarios gang, who chased him down and stabbed him to death, believing he was a rival gang member. The man who delivered the fatal slash to Feliz's throat, Jonaiki Martinez-Estrella, was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. 13 other suspects are being held accountable for their actions, including 4 defendants who were found guilty of murder, conspiracy, and assault, and are serving life sentences with minimums ranging from 23 to 25 years. In late June of 2025, Martinez-Estrella was found unresponsive in his cell at the Coxsackie Correctional Facility in upstate New York. Staff members attempted life-saving measures but were unable to revive the 31-year-old convicted killer. Authorities have not announced a cause of death, and an investigation was ongoing at the time the story broke. Number 20. Lionel Pickens Jr. Rapper Lionel Pickens Jr., better known by his stage name Chinks, was murdered in a drive-by shooting in New York City in May of 2015. The 31-year-old succumbed to a gunshot wound to the torso after being found in his luxury car at an intersection in Jamaica, Queens. In 2017, prosecutors identified Jamar Hill and Quincy Homer as suspects in the case. Following their arrests, both defendants pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder, second-degree attempted murder, first-degree assault, and 2 gun charges. According to sources and court documents, Homer was jealous of Pickens' success. He and Hill were accused of hunting the victim down like an animal over a previous dispute while Pickens sat at a red light. Homer pleaded guilty to a reduced manslaughter charge in July of 2025 and was sentenced the following month to 23 years in prison. The case against Hill is pending while he serves prison time for an unrelated case. Number 19. Miriam Yarimi. A typical Saturday afternoon in Brooklyn took a tragic turn on March 29th when a speeding car struck a family who were out for a walk. 34-year-old Natasha Sada and her daughters Diana and Deborah were killed, and her son was critically injured. Police identified the driver as a 32-year-old wig maker named Miriam Yarimi, a known superspeeder who was driving on a suspended license at the time of the crash. She had previously received more than 90 tickets for traffic violations, including 18 citations for speeding in a school zone in 2024 alone. According to investigators, Yarimi crashed into another vehicle after failing to yield at a red light, injuring the car's 5 occupants. She then struck Sada and her children as they crossed the street. Within hours of the accident, Yarimi was charged with a litany of crimes, including 3 counts each of criminal negligent homicide, manslaughter, and assault. She pleaded not guilty and was remanded without bail to Rikers Island, where she remains in custody pending the outcome of her case. Number 18. Amanda Kempton. 40-year-old luxury real estate agent and former reality TV star Sarah Burke met an untimely fate on June 19th when she was killed by a hit-and-run driver in Long Island, New York. She succumbed to her injuries after being found unresponsive along the Montauk Highway in Hampton Bays during the early morning hours. Burke, who starred in the 2020 season of $1 Million Beach House, was known to spend 6 months of the year in the exclusive Hamptons seaside resort community, but her life reportedly spiraled due to a prescription pill addiction and mental health issues, and she was living homeless by choice at the time of her death. Speaking exclusively with the New York Post, Burke's close friend and former boyfriend, Mike White, said that she began behaving oddly in 2022 during a dispute with her employer over a $200,000 commission she expected to receive. She became increasingly reclusive and paranoid, believing that her colleagues and others were conspiring against her. Burke eventually sold her car and condo and began spending copious amounts of time at a local library while her family's efforts to get her into treatment failed. The day after the tragedy, police arrested a 32-year-old marine biologist from Virginia named Amanda Kempton on suspicion of leaving the scene of a motor vehicle accident resulting in death. According to prosecutors, Kempton visited a tavern before striking Burke with her car, but the woman's lawyer argued during an initial court hearing that alcohol was not considered a factor in the case. Kempton's defense attorney also claimed that his client believed she had hit a traffic cone owing to the limited visibility caused by foggy conditions at the time of the collision. Number 17. Brittney Scott. In early May, Miami Beach authorities announced the arrest of a Brooklyn woman for a string of thefts targeting men she met while out partying. 28-year-old Brittney Scott was accused of stealing thousands of dollars worth of jewelry and credit cards from the victims, who woke up to find their property missing after suddenly losing consciousness. One victim told police that he passed out while having drinks with Scott in his apartment in June of 2023. When he awoke, his $14,000 Rolex watch and credit cards were all missing. 2 more alleged thefts occurred in October and November of 2024, when 2 victims discovered similar missing property after falling asleep in the suspect's company. One of the victims reported suffering a head injury from a wine bottle, hinting toward the possibility that he had been deliberately knocked unconscious following her arrest. Scott denied having any memory of the thefts. 2 of the victims were able to identify her in a lineup. and investigators zeroed in on her as a suspect using surveillance footage and a photo that one of the victims had captured with his phone. Scott was charged with multiple felonies in connection with the 3 incidents, including burglary with assault or battery and grand theft. Number 16. Marie McWilliams. In one of the many unprovoked subway attacks that have made news headlines this year, a great-grandmother was brutally beaten by a stranger in Midtown Manhattan in May. 73-year-old Aurora Gonzalez was on her way to her job as an office cleaner when she overheard a woman nearby making racist comments. Gonzalez, who is Hispanic, asked the woman if the remarks were directed at her. The suspect remained silent but followed Gonzalez as she exited the train and struck her in the back of the head, causing the senior citizen to fall into a homeless person's feces-covered belongings. The beating continued, leaving Gonzalez with 2 black eyes, bleeding cuts and other injuries, which have resulted in ongoing kidney problems and debilitating migraines. In addition to her physical injuries, Gonzalez told the New York Post that she suffers from ongoing sleeplessness and anxiety from the attack, which has left her feeling terrified whenever she rides the subway. Several weeks after the incident, police arrested 36-year-old Bronx resident Marie McWilliams on an assault charge. Prosecutors urged the court to set bail at $10,000 or more, but the judge granted the defendant supervised release following her arraignment hearing. Number 15. Edison Irizarry. At around 9 p.m. on July 21st, a retired police officer for the city of Beacon called 911 and confessed to shooting his roommate. Upon arriving at the scene, officers found 58-year-old Casey Cuddy dead from multiple gunshot wounds. To avoid a conflict of interest, the local police department turned the investigation over to the New York State Police. The suspect, 52-year-old Edison Irizarry, was detained at the scene and has remained held without bail at the Dutchess County Jail ever since. According to the A Little About Beacon blog, Irizarry had recently moved into the unit, which is divided into 2 living spaces. While the circumstances surrounding the killing remain unclear, a witness described Cuddy as never anything but kind. In early August, the grand jury indicted Irizarry on a second-degree murder charge. If convicted, he could face a maximum sentence of 25 years to life in prison. Number 14. Luciano Frattolin. A frantic search for a missing Canadian girl ended tragically in July with the discovery of her murdered body in an upstate New York pond. Efforts to find Melina Frattolin had started several days earlier after her father, 45-year-old Luciano Frattolin, called 911 to report her missing from a parking lot near Lake George in the Adirondack region. Frattolin claimed that 2 men had forced his daughter into a white van, prompting the authorities to issue an Amber Alert, but investigators noticed inconsistencies in his stories and eventually concluded that there was no evidence that Melina had been kidnapped. The following day, a search team found Melina's remains in a wooded area in Ticonderoga, roughly 30 miles north from where she had been reported missing. Melina and Luciana had traveled to the popular resort area from Montreal for a vacation more than a week earlier. They were due back in Canada that weekend, but they never returned home. Preliminary autopsy results indicate that Melina was forcibly drowned and Luciano has been charged with her murder. According to news reports, Luciano had been estranged from Melina's mother since 2019. Her mother was aware of the planned vacation and reported having no prior concerns about Luciano and their daughter traveling to the US together. In addition to the murder charge, Frattolin faces 1 count of concealment of a corpse. He pleaded not guilty during his arraignment in late July and remains held without bail as he awaits his next court hearing. Number 13. Hadi Matar. Author Salman Rushdie was about to give a lecture at the Chautauqua Institution in August of 2022 when a man rushed onto the stage and stabbed him repeatedly, leaving him permanently blind in one eye and with other life-changing injuries, including damage to his liver and hands. Later identified as 24-year-old Hadi Matar, the assailant was arrested the following day. During an interview with the New York Post, Matar said he was surprised that Rushdie survived. He declined to say whether he attacked Rushdie because of a bounty that was placed on the victim's head by Ayatollah Khomeini, due to the controversial nature of his work, which is seen by some as a critical depiction of the Prophet Muhammad. Matar was charged in both state and federal court with a laundry list of crimes, including terrorism-related offenses. In February of 2025, a jury found him guilty in state court after deliberating for less than 2 hours. He was sentenced in May to 25 years for attempted murder plus 7 years for assault. In July of 2025, Matar was indicted on federal charges of attempting to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization, an act of terrorism transcending national boundaries, and providing material support to terrorists. The case is ongoing. Number 12. Scott Mitchell. 58-year-old Daniel McClough and 55-year-old Marshall Van Oven were reported missing in early February of this year. 2 days later, the two friends were found murdered inside an apartment in Binghamton, New York. 3 days after the discovery of the bodies, police publicly identified 50-year-old Scott Mitchell as a suspect in the case. An abandoned vehicle connected to Mitchell had been found in Dorchester County, South Carolina, but by then he had stolen a car and fled the area. Authorities appealed to the public for information regarding his whereabouts while warning civilians that he was considered armed and dangerous. 3 days after the announcement was made, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office in Florida discovered the vehicle that Mitchell was suspected of stealing in South Carolina. The following day, a member of the public saw him panhandling outside a McDonald's in Daytona Beach and tipped off law enforcement. He was arrested without incident and has since been extradited to New York, where he faces 2 counts of second-degree murder. Mitchell reportedly said little to investigators following his capture, and he refused to answer reporters' questions. In the meantime, authorities have not publicly speculated on the circumstances leading up to the murders, leaving the accused killer's alleged motive for the crime unclear. Number 11. Stephanie Castillo. Nearly 5 years after her newborn twin sons were found deceased in an alleyway behind a Bronx apartment building, their mother has been charged with their murders. Named Zeke and Zane by the police after the discovery of their remains in November of 2020, the victims had succumbed to blunt force injuries. Their deaths were ruled homicidal in nature, and detectives worked diligently to solve the case, but progress was slow. An arrest finally came in late July of 2025 when 36-year-old Stephanie Castillo was taken into custody at a homeless shelter in the Morris Heights neighborhood. She was charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and first and second-degree manslaughter. According to prosecutors, Castillo was identified as the twins' mother and the suspected killer through DNA evidence. Prior to ending up in a shelter, she lived with her parents in the building that the victims were found outside of. Unaware that the deceased boys were their grandchildren, Castillo's parents have attended a vigil in their memory every year since their deaths. Castillo's pregnancy went unnoticed not only by her own family but by her neighbors. Authorities have not disclosed what took them so long to make an arrest, but news reports speculate that a lack of witnesses and surveillance footage connecting Castillo to the crime are likely factors in the delayed delivery of justice. Number 10. Jaia Cruz. 36-year-old father of 2 Ray Hodge was working a routine shift as a mail carrier on January 2nd when he lost his life during a petty argument at a Manhattan bodega. A store employee later told police that the altercation began with a verbal disagreement between Hodge and 24-year-old Jaia Cruz over who was first in line. Workers tried to separate the two parties, but Cruz pulled a knife and stabbed Hodge repeatedly in the torso. Police recovered the weapon at the scene and arrested Cruz, who was charged with second-degree murder. She had at least 5 prior arrests on her record and a history of knife violence, including previous allegations that she had threatened to slash someone's throat with a box cutter. In mid-April, Cruz pleaded guilty to a reduced first-degree manslaughter charge in exchange for a 15-year prison sentence, followed by 5 years of supervised release. The punishment came as a disappointment to Hodge's family, who were hoping for a stiffer sentence. Speaking to CBS News, his mother described feeling cheated by the system, while acknowledging that Hodge's loved ones had no choice but to move forward. Number 9. Sam Nordquist. On February 9th, state police in Canandaigua received a call from the concerned family of a 24-year-old transgender man named Sam Nordquist, who had left Minnesota months earlier to meet his online girlfriend, 38-year-old Precious Arzuega. Nordquist was months overdue to return from his trip, and relatives had last heard from him more than a month earlier. Before he went radio silent, his loved ones had noticed that something seemed off about his communications, leading to fears that something bad had happened to him. Officers tracked Nordquist's last known location to a motel in Hopewell, where Arzuega was living. Inside the room, they found evidence of foul play. 3 days later, police discovered Nordquist's remains. in a field in neighboring Yates County, roughly 20 miles from the motel. Further investigation revealed that Nordquist had been tortured by multiple suspects for up to a month prior to his death. According to law enforcement, he had been sodomized with a table leg, beaten with various objects, deprived of food and water, forced to consuming urine and feces, and doused in bleach. 7 suspects were arrested in connection with Nordquist's death, including Oswego, 30-year-old Jennifer Kaihano, 33-year-old Kyle Sage, 30-year-old Patrick Goodwin, 19-year-old Emily Mataika, 21-year-old Thomas Eves, and 29-year-old Kimberly Socia. The defendants are all facing charges of first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, second-degree conspiracy, and endangering the welfare of a child. 6 individuals are accused of the concealment of a corpse, while 4 of the suspects are charged with abuse. Number 8. Shane Tamura. During the evening rush hour on July 28th, a crazed gunman opened fire inside the lobby of a 44-story office building in Midtown Manhattan, killing 3 people. Armed with a high-powered rifle, he then made his way to the 33rd floor, where he continued to spray bullets, claiming a 4th victim. Included among those killed were 46-year-old security guard Aland Etienne, 36-year-old off-duty NYPD officer Didarul Islam, who was also working security, 43-year-old real estate CEO Wesley Lapatna, and 27-year-old Julia Hyman. 4 others escaped with minor injuries, while a National Football League staffer suffered major injuries after being shot in the back. Later identified as 27-year-old Shane Devon Tamura, the shooter reportedly meant to target the NFL headquarters, which is housed inside the skyscraper, but he took the wrong elevator. He was found dead at the scene after barricading himself inside a stairwell. Inside Tamura's pocket, police found a note blaming the NFL for his chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a degenerative brain disease found in individuals with a history of repeated head injuries. He had been a competitive football player in high school, but never played professionally, and believed that the NFL had failed to adequately warn people about the dangers associated with the sport. Tamura had a documented history of mental health issues, but it did not stop him from obtaining a permit to carry a concealed weapon prior to the shooting. He worked at a Las Vegas casino. Based on the information in the note found in his pocket, investigators believe Tamura bought the assault rifle that was used in the massacre from his boss. During the sale, which was completed under the oversight of a gun store, a state background check came back unresolved. A legal loophole nevertheless allowed Tamura to keep his weapons, and has since become a focal point of national discussions on gun control in America. Number 7. The murder of Angel Mendoza. A Bronx teenager lost his life, and several others are facing serious criminal charges after a playground brawl erupted into deadly violence in early August. Police responded to the scene at Williamsbridge Oval Park, where they found Angel Mendoza and another young victim suffering from severe injuries. Both victims had been stabbed multiple times, and Mendoza had been beaten with a skateboard. The unnamed teen survived, but Mendoza died from his injuries after being rushed to the hospital. Speaking with ABC7, Mendoza's father described his son as a quiet kid who didn't bother anyone, but had fallen in with a bad crowd. According to news reports, the 9th grader was killed while hanging out with the boy who had been involved in an earlier fight with the attackers. Police recovered several knives from the crime scene and discovered cell phone video of the fight. While investigating the case, they believe that at least 7 individuals were involved in the brawl and have arrested 4 suspects thus far, including 18-year-old Andrew Ansar, 18-year-old Jordan Williams, and 2 unnamed minors. The defendants have all been charged with murder, manslaughter, 2 counts of gang assault, and 2 weapon-related counts. Number 6. Patricia Ruth Holt. On July 24th, authorities in Dallas, Texas, responded to a local scrapyard where they found 47-year-old Carl Joseph Donaldson suffering from a gunshot wound to the head. As deputies arrived at the scene, they saw one of Donaldson's employees, 57-year-old Patricia Ruth Holt, fleeing in a pickup truck. Law enforcement disabled the vehicle using spike strips, but Holt barricaded herself inside the cab, leading to a 4-hour standoff. She eventually surrendered peacefully and is currently in custody on a murder charge with bond set at $1 million. Following Holt's arrest, news reports reveal that this was not her first run-in with the law. In 1986, nearly 40 years earlier, she was arrested in Brooklyn's Red Hook neighborhood for attempted murder. Holt, who was 18 years old at the time, was accused of threatening to kill and trying to attack a teacher who had disciplined her. She pleaded guilty to a reduced attempted assault charge and was sentenced to 5 years of probation due to her young age. Number 5. Marjorie Quarrie. Authorities in Long Island, New York are on the hunt for the killer of 36-year-old home healthcare aide Conrad Gowan, who was fatally stabbed in the neck at his Jamesport home in Suffolk County in March of 2024. Police identified the suspect as Gowan's girlfriend, 50-year-old Marjorie Quarrie, who was reportedly enraged after discovering that the victim was seeing other women. A warrant was issued for Quarrie's arrest, but she remains at large, owing to her knack for disguise. Past booking photos prove her ability to dramatically alter her appearance, and she's known to use aliases including Nicola Watson. Investigators believe Quarrie is hiding out somewhere in Queens and working as a home health aide, while surviving without a phone and staying off social media. A cash reward is being offered for information leading to her arrest. Number 4. Donald Zieben-Hood. In late July, 34-year-old Jacob Zieben-Hood was found stabbed to death on the toilet at his Harlem apartment. Suspicion quickly turned to his husband, 40-year-old Donald Zieben-Hood, who had previously been accused of choking Jacob and threatening him with a knife. Investigators uncovered a history of domestic violence allegations against Donald dating back to 2022, including prior felony charges for strangulation and menacing. Those who knew Jacob are now saying that Donald isolated him in the years leading up to his death, and that Jacob had complained early on in the relationship about Donald being possessive and jealous. He eventually stopped communicating with his friends but continued posting photos with Donald on social media, making it seem as though the couple were living a picture-perfect existence. Following Jacob's death, Donald pleaded not guilty to burglary, criminal contempt, and weapons possession. Authorities are awaiting autopsy results and have said that murder charges could be forthcoming. Number 3. Matthew Warren. While responding to a call about suspicious individuals in Pitt County, North Carolina, in late March, sheriff's deputies spotted 2 men exiting a wooded area. Immediately after they detained the pair for questioning, they found 36-year-old Rashawn Gray pinned beneath a vehicle nearby. Gray was pronounced dead at the scene and the case was ruled a homicide. The 2 males who were detained at the scene have since been charged in connection with Gray's death. One of the suspects was identified as a 27-year-old resident of Buffalo, New York, named Matthew Warren. According to police, he was involved in a dispute with Gray prior to the homicide. Warren is being held without bond at the Pitt County Jail amid the ongoing case. The second suspect, 24-year-old Bobby Joyner, was charged with accessory after the fact. He remains in custody in lieu of a $250,000 bond. Today's topic was requested by Jordan Harris 68801. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Ina Vernikov. Ina Vernikov, a lawyer and member of the New York City Council for the 48th District, showed up to a pro-Palestine rally on the Brooklyn College campus on October the 13th of 2023. The gathering was taking place in light of the October 7th Hamas attack, which had left over 1,000 Israelis dead, and most of those in attendance were there to show support for Palestine. Vernikov, a Jewish woman, was previously a registered Democrat, but she became a Republican to run for office, citing a rise of anti-Semitism and socialism in New York City. During the October 13 rally, the 39-year-old woman told followers on X, "I'm here at the pro-Hamas rally in Brooklyn College. There is a ton of police and we made sure the Jewish students feel safe today. But here they are screaming and yelling, 'Intifada, globalize the Intifada.'" Vernikov added, "If you are here today standing with these people, you are nothing short of a terrorist without the bombs." A Smith & Wesson 9mm pistol was visible on Vernikov's waist. She had a concealed carry license, but it was a Class E felony to bring a gun to a protest or school grounds. Vernikov was arrested on charges of criminal possession of a firearm. CUNY for Palestine X account wrote that she was showcasing a gun as a tactical force and intimidation, meant to silence support for Palestine. The Brooklyn DA eventually dropped the charges over a lack of proof that the gun was operable, citing a lab report that the gun was unloaded and missing its recoil spring assembly. Number 1. Luigi Mangione. In a case that has graced more national news headlines than almost any other crime in recent months, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione is accused of mercilessly executing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, who was shot dead on a Midtown Manhattan sidewalk in December of 2024. Mangione was arrested days later at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, after witnesses recognized him as the murder suspect, and he's now facing several state and federal charges for his alleged crimes. Prosecutors seem intent on securing a conviction, with federal attorneys seeking the death penalty against Mangione, but the accused murderer has become a celebrated folk hero among many Americans due to growing discontent over the rising costs of health insurance and the inaccessibility to medical care that plague much of the country. Mangione pleaded not guilty to all charges and is currently being held without bail at a federal detention center in Brooklyn as he awaits his next court hearing, which is scheduled for September 16th. Meanwhile, the case continues to have a polarizing effect on the public, with supporters contributing to his legal defense costs, while those who disapprove of Mangione's actions making it clear that they believe killing is wrong, regardless of the evils of America's for-profit healthcare industry. Thanks for watching. Which US city would you least like to live in and why? Let us know in the comments section below.